So good.
Welcome to Five Lemons Laughing. Today is a very special episode. We're celebrating Mother's Day. And it isn't just about mothers. It's about the divine wisdom that allows truth, healing, and presence. It's about one woman in particular. Today, we're talking about Mary Magdalene, how she has been erased, rewritten, misunderstood for centuries. Yeah. But what if the woman most misunderstood in history is also the one that holds the map back to our wholeness?
I think we should think of a few things. Mary wasn't a sinner. She was a seer, not a background character to Jesus, but she was the first witness to Jesus's resurrection. She was his student, his friend, and his equal. And this episode is for every woman who's ever been mislabeled or made to feel small. There's no more shrinking and no more shame, and it's time to step up to our divine feminine. And what can we learn from Mary Magdalene? We can learn we don't have to be shrinking. We don't have to shame ourselves or shame others. And it's time to rise and own our name. Divine feminine, bold and true, the sacred power lives with you. And let's learn some more. Learn some more, Morgan.
Okay. What did you want to add, Penny?
Pardon me?
You looked like you wanted to say something.
I was just saying nothing.
You just are smiling really
She loves
big.
the rhyming. She loves rhyming.
That is, thank you. I got distracted for a second, but yes, it was the rhyming. That's what it was so cute.
Well, okay. Thank you, Amanda and Melissa, for introducing our episode. This is such a fun topic. I've actually read quite a bit about Mary Magdalene. I mentioned to you all last week about the book, The Lifetimes When Jesus and Buddha Knew Each Other, which is a channeled book, and it's written by Gary Renard. And then I also mentioned the Tina Louise Spalding book, Love and a Map to the Unaltered Soul, which is also a channeled book. I had forgotten about the book by Megan Watterson called Mary Magdalene Revealed, which I also read. And it is not a channeled book. It is deeply researched. And it's a great reference or resource for any skeptics out there who aren't into the channeled material. But just circling back to the Gary Renard book, Lifetimes When Jesus and Buddha Knew Each Other, he carries you through in that book several different lifetimes when Jesus, Buddha, and Mary Magdalene were all incarnated together at the same time. Obviously, they went by different names in each of these lifetimes. But they were, it was like they were on the same learning trajectory, which was far more advanced than the trajectory that any of us are currently on or were at that time. And so they were, they were all equals and peers and teachers. And in one lifetime, one personality would rise as kind of the vocal one who commanded the most attention from students and whatnot, but they were by no means more advanced than the other two. So they kind of went through several different lifetimes like that. So I love that new understanding of Mary Magdalene, because growing up in the Southern Baptist Church, there was that whole thing introduced by Pope Gregory I that she was a former prostitute, which has since been widely rejected by scholars, but somehow that label still kind of follows her around. And she was just kind of a passive figure in the background of the church. Her gospel was wiped out of the New Testament, and she wasn't honored or revered as the spiritual teacher and leader that she was. Jesus is equal, as Melissa said in the intro. So, I mean, I'm going to list all of the different resources that I found for anyone who wants to dig a little deeper about it. But I think that sets us up kind of for our episode, and we don't have to go into more of that type of detail. We can just dive into our discussion. So, yeah, how did you all first hear about Mary Magdalene, or what was your impression of her, and how is that different maybe from your impression of her now? Anything to add,
Amanda? Because we all grew up in Christian backgrounds. I grew up in Catholic schools and convents and that kind of thing. So I have a pretty rigid story that I was told. Same as you. She was a prostitute and that kind of thing. And I love to know the real facts.
Mm-hmm.
My brain took a left turn, because when you were talking through that it just reminded me of the time when the church was, when Constantine was organizing the Bible, right? So it was a time to put forward his agenda, his personal agenda, and having women not be powerful people. I haven't read this, but I'm assuming, or, like that was part of the agenda, was for a woman to be that. And it's so interesting. I don't know if that was the beginning of it or they were already in it, but certainly seeing that carried forward to like the roles of women on TV, like in the 50s and the 60s and all that kind of stuff. I wonder if that laid the groundwork for how women were treated through the ages. So that's, my brain went to thinking about that.
Well, I also recently was thinking how in kind of a patriarchal culture, men, and not all men, of course, but some men, some history writers and that kind of thing, they have this thing with the prostitute and the virgin. Like, it is a theme. And it's interesting that it was a theme in the Bible, and it's the theme of Christianity. Like, men, a lot of men, or let's just say, I don't want to categorize it, but in the past, some men have like their family, their daughters, their wife, their mothers, they have to have that virgin purity, but they don't have that same caliber of credentials needed for prostitutes. And that they're like, it's like an either or sometimes. There's not a balance. I just think it's a theme and it's a story in a lot of patriarchal communities and histories and religions.
Yeah.
You're looking like your brain just took another turn, Amanda?
No.
Okay.
I was just confirming what I said, because like making sure it was Constantine that did the council, the Nicene Council in
yes.
325.
Look
so
at
I just
you pulling out all these references, Amanda. I love it. I'm so impressed.
I was fact checking myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm doing a little bit more digging too. And just like, just to refresh my memory, because I've read all of this before, but I don't just have them at the ready. Like, what motivation did the early church have to diminish Mary Magdalene's role? And this is what I was given. First of all, just exactly what Melissa said, patriarchy and power. If they diminished her role, then it would allow the church to justify excluding women from leadership. And, in ancient Roman culture, like, women were not powerful. There wasn't priestesses and all of that. That was associated with barbarian cultures and stuff like that. So it also allowed them to suppress Gnostic and mystical teachings. And so Gnostic teachings, you don't need an institution to find God. And that was a threat to the church. So they eliminated everything from the New Testament that aligned with the Course in Miracles and Jesus' true teachings, essentially, because then you just can bypass the church altogether. So that's a strong motivation for, rewriting her story. It also allowed them to shame women around sexuality, control women and their bodies and sexuality, and just reinforce this whole like sinful attitude towards women and towards sex. And, it ties back into Eve and the fall from grace and all that. You know what I mean? So yeah, there's a lot of incentive for the early church to repaint her in this unflattering light. And, early in my Christianhood, I would have been too afraid to dig into like what doesn't exactly line up in the New Testament or in the Bible. And now it's just glaringly obvious,
Pope Francis just passed away recently too. And I was listening to the New York Times Daily this morning about him. And one of the things that he wanted to bring into the Catholic Church, the 1.3 billion followers of the Catholic religion, is the possibility of women being priests. And he was met with such, the conservatives in the Catholic Church were just up in arms and called him even a heretic. I think that's how you say it, right? And that's a really amazing thing that somebody would call the Pope that, another cardinal. But anyway, so it just all kind of falls in alignment. But I think what we're seeing with looking at Mary Magdalene is we're seeing a shift in the divine feminine power coming back. And so even though Francis didn't do anything about women becoming priests, he at least, they said that the thing that he did is he opened up all these conversations that had been shut down for centuries because nobody dared talk about it. And so, yeah, we're daring.
And then they made that like the rule of God. Then they put the fear in people and they said this God was saying this and this is truth.
Yeah.
And then people don't question, and that's how they control you.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun. Oh, yeah.
It's so funny. Like, have you guys ever seen the Stepford Wives? It's a movie. For some reason, my brain keeps connecting that to Hollywood. Isn't that interesting? Like, is that the same type of impression that they were, the
it's
people?
like The Handmaid's Tale. Like, that is such a profound show to me now. The Handmaid's Tale.
I haven't watched
Never seen it.
Oh my God. Literally, it is Christianity taking over the United States to the point where, well, it was because of they don't say global warming, environmental issues. People couldn't continue to have children. People were sterile. And so there were groups of women who could, and that is a handmaid. And essentially white Christian couples like that have qualified themselves that way, they could acquire a handmaid and they would continually rape her together to impregnate her to have children for their family. And if you were, again, like any kind of woman that didn't fall into a purity level, you were killed, sent away, went to work camps, all that kind of stuff. And it was all very Christian based.
How could you watch that, Melissa?
It's really intense. And it's really, I think, like literally before I started watching that or reading the book, this wouldn't have been a big issue for me. Like I was like, that's never going to happen. Women are never going to have their rights taken away. We're never going to have men who believe that all pure women need to be right by their side and all non-pure women either need to be of service for them or killed.
Or paid for having babies.
Yeah. Right. So it's like, but I see our politics turning this way and it's really scary. And we don't need to get on that. But anyways, it is, it's that patriarchy thing and that like men who say they somehow know the word of God. And so then it's supposed to be the rules and everybody's rules. So back to Mary Magdalene, she was not this horrible prostitute that, like when I was going to school, it was like, don't be like Mary, Virgin Mary, don't be like Mary Magdalene.
Right.
So
it was kind of confusing too, because they were both Mary.
Yes.
You weren't quite sure which Mary you were, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just a side note, in the Tina Louise Spalding book? I don't remember because I read the 3 different books and so they all kind of run together. In one of the books, Jesus and Mary were actually intimate partners. They were actually married and had children. And she continued his ministry in France after he died. And then like even in one of the books, it talks about how he continued his ministry after he came back into his body after the crucifixion and the resurrection and all of that, and continued his ministry in France with Mary Magdalene for some time before he like left for good. So just so interesting to read. And that was in one of the channeled works. So, take it or leave it if you're not into that. But just super interesting. Like she was a mother too. And of course that part's erased from the New Testament,
A mother to Jesus's children.
Exactly.
Yeah. I never knew that either until I went on a tour in France with a group. It was called the Mary Magdalene Tour. And we toured all the places where she spent her final years. It was really fascinating. I had never read up on her, except that I knew that she was a prostitute. And I still believed that even when I went on this trip. And then I just learned so much more about her. It was quite fascinating. And I was like, what? She was married and had children with Jesus? No, it was just so like mind blowing. I couldn't even but there's lots of evidence of it. If you go through some of the cathedrals, even in France, I can't remember which one we were in, but there's one where it distinctly shows Jesus and Mary Magdalene. And it's like, that's proof that they were together. I can't remember which cathedral we were at this point, but there's a lot of evidence. And it's just like Da Vinci Code. I mean, the Da Vinci Code also talked a bit about Mary Magdalene too. So. Yeah.
Love that. That tour sounds amazing.
It was. It was Sacred Journeys. I'll find the name, and if anybody wants to talk to Finbar, he's just amazing. He was a former priest, and
Who's Finbar? Oh, you're
he's
saying
the he's the man who owns the company that I went on the tour with.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
He was a former priest, and he is not a priest anymore, and he is definitely into digging beneath what the church has, or digging into what the church has hidden for all these years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really fascinating stuff. Yeah.
So does anybody have their own version of like a time in your life where a false representation of you has been?
I would say definitely when I was young, right? The image of women were sexual beings, right? Was in my mind. So yeah, I guess still part of me judges that I was too young to be in that, right? So that's interesting that came up. But like having to let go of not just a sexual being, but like my body was for the service of men, I guess is a better way, a more raw way to say it. It's not just being a sexual divine female is powerful, right? But it's a different tone.
I think we do have that in our society. Like when you hit puberty and you get boobs and you get everything else, you move into a sexual, I mean, it's like literally moving you into a sexual identity. And then as a community or as a society, we've made it sexualized. And I think a lot of women go through that when they hit puberty and when they're too young, like not allowed to have childhoods and teenager lives. And you move straight into a sexual identity. And you probably years and not even thousands, hundreds of years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, you did start having children like when you were 14.
Yeah.
So
or younger.
Yeah. Or younger. Yeah.
I think part of that, like that it's shame-based thing, right?
Yes.
So going through that, like it was more to be hidden, more to be shameful instead of the truth, you know, that we are powerful beings. It's a whole different vibe. To me, that's like, really looking at Mary Magdalene and who she actually was. That would be a powerful thing. If I had learned that, if that was the truth being spoken around to when I was going through puberty, I think it would have altered my mind a little bit about how I felt about it.
Yeah, we grew up in such a strange time where women are sexualized and expected to embody that and also shamed for embodying that. Like, so what a confusing message that is.
I read once that, and I can't quote the book or anything, but that most girls drop out of sports when they hit puberty because they go from realizing that people are looking at their bodies. And they get chest and their chest starts moving when they're playing basketball or whatever, and they feel like seen where they have never been seen like that before. And it makes them very uncomfortable. And so they get out of sports. And, I don't know if that's true or not. I know that when girls hit puberty, they do attract men's attention in a different way. And men do look.
Yeah.
And it is all very complicated territory.
Yeah. And then go ahead, Morgan. You go ahead, Morgan.
Well, I haven't heard from you much yet, so I want to hear from you.
Oh, I was just going to move on to a story about my Mary Magdalene experience.
Hello. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that you are enjoying this episode. Just wanted to share a few things with you before we get back to our program. So did you know that the hosts of Five Lemons Laughing offer a wide range of spiritual counseling and coaching? Yes. And we know that no two journeys are the same. So if you're experiencing grief, health challenges, life transitions, or just seeking to deepen your spiritual path, we get it, and we are here for it. Or perhaps you're navigating difficult relationships, want to know more about calling in the love you deserve, or your career needs a reboot and you're seeking executive coaching through a spiritual lens. We've got you covered. Just visit 5lemonslaughing, all spelled out, to explore how you can work with us individually or all of us if you prefer. Your path is sacred. So why not walk it together? And if this episode speaks to you, the best way to support us is by liking, sharing, and subscribing. And if you know someone who loves high vibration content, please pass this along. Your kindness and your connection helps more people find us. And we're so grateful for your support. Thanks for listening and helping us to make a difference. And that's it for the announcements, but stay tuned. We are just getting started. In the second half, we'll dive deeper and share how to overcome some of the challenges and move forward with insight, humor, and heart. Thank you and enjoy.
I was just going to move on to a story about my Mary Magdalene experience.
Yes.
You would like to hear it?
I would.
Okay. So when I first moved out of North Dakota, I stopped in Arizona. Well, after I bartended in my brother's bar at Eden, Wyoming, the Garden of Eden. Yeah. Anyway, so I moved to Arizona and I got a job, my very first sales job. I was so excited. It was straight commission. All I got was $250 in car allowance, and I'm making it on my own, and I don't know shit. And I want to be a salesperson. And so I got a job, and I was so thankful. Long distance for less. I was going up against the big guys. AT&T had just divested into Sprint and MCI and long distance for less. But I really depended on my manager. His name was Armand. I'm not going to say his last name to keep him, to protect him. I have to protect him. That's so funny.
Yeah. That's a whole episode.
Okay. It was Sapansky, Armand Sapansky. Okay. I just said it. Anyway, I loved Armand because he was so helpful. He was such a good salesperson, and I was learning so much for him. So I went out and did tons of cold calls. And then as soon as I got an appointment, I'd come back to the office. I'd say, Armand, can you please come to this appointment with me? Because I want to learn as much as I can, and I want to close a sale because I need to eat. And so I wouldn't say that to him, but I depended on him for help so much. And he was very willing to give help. And nothing sexual ever between us, ever. I really looked up to him as an equal, as a manager, like he was helping me. I was learning so much. And one day, the vice president of the company called me into his office. His name was Gary. And Gary said to me, Penny, I just want you to know that there's a lot of rumors going around that you're sleeping with Armand. And I went, what are you talking about? Okay, so let me just back up a couple steps too. I was very successful. I was the top salesperson. I was closing all the deals. There was like 4 guys on my team. They were doing shit. They weren't doing the work. So of course they weren't getting the sales. Sales is all about numbers. You do the numbers, you get the money, right? You get the sales. I was very successful, and they were jealous. And so they were pretty sure that I was sleeping with Armand. I was getting all the hot leads, and he was giving them to me because he liked me the most because I was giving him sex. I am telling you, I was so pissed.
Rude.
Yeah.
Very rude.
Rude.
I was so pissed. And I continued to do very well because I wasn't going to let those assholes take me down and call me a prostitute.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was really a pivotal experience. Well, then unfortunately, a few months later, he was sleeping with one of the salespeople. So then it was like, people probably don't even believe that I never was. And his marriage fell apart and all this stuff. But it wasn't me.
It wasn't you.
It wasn't me. I wasn't that person.
Do you think it was a control thing?
Oh, absolutely. You mean for the guys telling Gary, spreading that rumor?
Yes.
Absolutely. They were trying to bring me down.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really sad because that is not who I was and never have been. I've never given sexual favors to get ahead in the game. Never.
To get what? Just bad.
To make more sales.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yay. I'm so glad
she couldn't possibly be so successful on her own.
Yeah, of course not. Well, and then what's really funny too is I'm in this class and it's all about building my business. And I just uncovered yesterday that I have this weird thought in me that I need a man in order to be successful.
Interesting.
So isn't that kind of funny? Yeah, that I'm going to blow that one up big time.
Maybe it's not even yours. It's still like operating in the collective consciousness and just came into your awareness for healing.
Oh my
Oh, but unfortunately, I think this was a huge theme for women, like as they became more successful and got into business and were allowed to be in business.
Yeah.
Okay, so we moved from not allowed to be out of the house to then allowed, but then sexually exploited continually
Yeah.
by so many, bosses. Like they had to, they couldn't have any progress,
Yeah.
or they were rumors were spread around like that, or they were fired. So unfortunately, I mean, we're giggling at the words we used and
The
stuff,
puns,
the puns, but it's just was the truth for so many people. Like, did you see the chemistry lesson, or that I read the book and then it became a show?
I didn't. Tell me a brief overview. I don't know what it is.
She is this brainiac, successful woman who wanted to study science and be in science. And you find early on in the book that she had a professor that raped her. Oh. And that when she went to go say what happened, they thought the cops, people were like, you made it up because he wouldn't advance you. So you made it up as to get back. And then it just shows her whole career and how she was underestimated and other people took credit for her work, and she's not smart enough to be a scientist. It's just over these themes over and over and over.
Yeah. What is the timeline that it was?
50s.
50s. Yeah.
That makes sense.
That makes sense.
And she was brilliant. Yeah. And then she shifted that. You might have seen some commercials. She shifted her knowledge into like cooking classes on TV. So, but like in the book, you're just like, what the fuck? Yeah. Because she is brilliant. So, I mean, and that's just one story out of millions and millions.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you go all the way back to the Roman Empire, when all of this really started, just bringing it back to Mary Magdalene, like, it's so funny that we just put our stock and faith and trust in what was decided by this culture that, used rape as a tool of war, and they like brutality and violence were core to Roman power. They had the gladiators, they had public executions, they had torture, they had exploitation, slavery. They routinely raped their slaves. They were sexual slaves. There was religious intolerance. I mean, like, why are we revering the Roman Empire? Like, it was just built on, like, I read a lot of historical fiction, so this is where I learn a lot about history, but it's all very well researched. But it's just like the Roman Empire was built on violence, slavery, sexual exploitation, classism, and like, it's just funny that we put so much stock in and just take whatever they're spoon feeding us as the truth, when, these guys were not like to be revered, or like, I don't know. I'm rambling.
Why do you think, I just got a question. I'm going to just ask it. It probably is going to take us down a rabbit hole, but why do you think God made men bigger than women, stronger than women?
To protect.
Protect. Yeah.
Oh, to protect us.
To protect us, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Protect us, not overpower us and harm us.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh.
Thank you. I don't know why I couldn't think of that on my own, but I appreciate what you guys. Yeah.
That's why we're together, right?
Yeah.
So here's what's exciting, right? So right now we are taking the power back. That's what this conversation is.
Yes.
It's a whole realigning thing.
Yeah. And I think we're still questioning, like, the whole prostitute versus virgin. Like, I can see it, but I can't put it into language yet about what it really means to me. But it's become like these things I'm opening my eyes to. And I'm not just like, oh, someone once told me Mary Magdalene was a prostitute. I'm going to just believe it hook, line, and sinker. Like, that's what the beauty is, that these things are being revealed, like you just said. And how awesome. We get to make choices. We get to decide to be able to talk about it even when we don't know all the answers. We get to question it. We get to ask questions like, why are men bigger than us? Like, it's great. It's really amazing, powerful stuff.
Yeah, it opens discussions. It opens up a new perspective. And that's what a miracle is, right? A change in perception.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are some like real life ways we can take our power back? Like, well, and I mean, for us individually, but also for women as a collective, as we are having this shift. And, I think collective conscious is shifting. I mean, there's still the work to be done, but, divine masculine and divine feminine like have to come into balance, and it is happening. But what are some ways that we can facilitate that?
I think it's the pause. I think one of the biggest things is pausing, like clearing the mind, connecting to like divine whatever, like connection to earth, connection to others. I think with that baseline, then comes self-confidence, comes like listening to the intuition and seeing that guidance. That for me, that's my personal journey, was being able to do that. Then because that helps me trust myself. When I trust myself, that I'm able to speak my needs.
Yeah.
That's my process.
I live with all men.
Oh.
And and I love it. And I love the men in my life. And I can talk about this with them. I don't hold them responsible for my happiness and my understanding, and they were raised in the same culture we were. Mm-hmm. They were little boys who grew up and got told stuff, like with my children, I get to tell them, I get to bring these questions up too for my boys. And we get to talk about how they treat women, and we get to talk about what's acceptable. So for me, it's not a blame game, but I just like new thoughts. Like I get to change my mind about the world, and I get to talk with other people, and maybe they change their mind about the world.
Beautiful.
Did you raise your boys Catholic?
Yes.
You did?
We're all not Catholic now, but
well, you're not practicing, but
not practicing, but yes, my kids were, they even started Catholic high school all the way through. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But we had a very, the priest of our diocese was, or our church was super liberal, super amazing, just an amazing man who all of his sermons were like philosophy and philosophical. And he talked to the children like, just there was never guilt and shame and all that kind of stuff in anything that he said. And so I was really happy for them to be in a spiritual community where they learned how to care for other humans and be good humans from good humans.
Right. Yeah. Well, you were in the liberal part of the Catholic Church. That makes a difference.
It does. And it is being shut down in Denver now. Not the school, but the liberal, like they have since kicked same-sex marriage the families out. They have, they're going back to the old school ways. So
I don't know if that's what Jesus would do.
I know.
And Mary Magdalene, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. I also think it's a good example of they want power again, and they want to control their people. And that's how it's easy to control people like that.
I think the women, the divine power of the woman is so present now that they can try, but it won't happen because women won't do it.
Right.
Right?
Most.
Yeah. We did have abortion get overturned, and there were a lot of
and it was because of a
voters.
Woman. It was a woman on the Supreme Court that put it over the edge.
Yeah.
He voted down. Yeah.
But as we though, like believing in the one mind, believing in the power of the woman, right? What's the most beneficial is like really claiming that feminine power and claiming that women will be in their power, right? And speak their truth. That's different. To me, when you guys both said that, when you brought that up, you were like, here's an example of. So that's again, that could be a whole nother episode.
Should be taking notes on this. Yeah. So the thing, you asked, what can we do individually to create the shift more deeply into the divine feminine? And for me, it's really just to keep doing my work, to clean up my woundedness that I have based on, the experiences that I had growing up. And to clean that up so that I can stay in my mature adult self when I'm around people that might trigger me, and then I can have conversations with them versus getting defensive, and I can pause before I respond to them. And so that's what I think I can do.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the pause is also like getting right with love, like getting in love before interacting.
I love that, getting right with love. That's a
I'm
way to say that.
Penny, if that same situation were to happen to you today with the coworkers, do you think you would respond any differently than you did then?
A great question.
That's a good question. Okay, let me go back to my 20. How old was I? It was like 1987, I'm going to say. So I was 27. And now let's fast forward 37 years. Gosh, I don't think it would have happened, honestly, because I would have been I don't know, man. God, that's a really hard question. If I was my 27 self, not knowing how to do sales or not trusting myself and looking outside of myself for help all the time, then maybe it would happen again because somebody would make up shit about that. But if I was, I guess if I trusted myself more but I need it, it's okay to depend on people for help, right? How would have okay, if I just decided how I would respond right now, I probably still would have been aghast. Like somebody would think that that's what I do to get ahead. I mean, and I probably I didn't ever talk to the guys about it. I probably would have went up to them and said something like, "What is going on, you guys?" I would have never just buried it under the sand. I would have probably went and confronted them and, or asked for a team meeting or something and bring it out in the open for everybody to hear about it. I'm pretty sure there was another woman on the team. I'm pretty sure I went and talked to her about it. But I mean, that was a long time ago, but it was just shocking is what it was.
And that would never happen because you are the fucking boss.
Yeah.
You are the boss.
Now. Yeah. Right now I am.
And you've done so much healing work, but also I want to just go back to what you're saying about how you would confront them nowadays if it were to happen. I think that's worth focusing on just a little bit because I think a lot of spiritual students sometimes think that when we're coming from a space of love and we're dealing with everything that comes our way from this lens of what's the loving choice, that doesn't mean that you don't confront people if that's how you're guided. And sometimes that is the most loving choice because it's loving to let those men know that they're behaving in a way that's irresponsible and unloving. And that is the loving choice. So I just think that's helpful to know because there's a part of when I was younger on my spiritual journey that would have just done what your 27-year-old self did and just did my own inner work on it, which is noble, for never brought it forth.
Good point.
Yeah.
That feels powerful, right? Like you could just feel the energy on this, on our podcast just shift to like.
Well, I have some less than spiritual ways that we can reclaim.
Let's hear it.
This lady posted on TikTok. She said, "Give me your best ways that you have decentered men." She said, "I'm not talking about journaling and focusing on yourself. I want the most insane, unhinged, borderline psycho things that you've done." And these are some of the comments. One person said, "When a man is slightly rude or has any type of attitude, I ask if he needs a minute to calm down. Or I say, we can revisit the conversation when he's less emotional." And then the other person said, "I assume every professional someone's talking about is a woman. So if the other person says, I spoke to the contractor about it, I say, oh, what did she say?" Do the same thing.
I love that.
Doctors and lawyers. There's a bunch
love
of them.
that.
They're awesome. They're fun to read. So.
That is good.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to take that in.
Hey, so I was working with my yoga mentor on Monday, and we were talking about the stuff that's going on. in my life. And she reminded
What'd she
me.
say? Okay. What'd she say?
Yeah. So
she covering our bases.
Yeah. So she reminded me that whoever's in front of me is meant to be in front of me. Whatever I'm experiencing, I'm meant to be experiencing. Whatever is beginning now is meant to begin now. And whatever is over is over.
Mm.
And there's I don't know what yoga teaching that is, but that's from a yoga teaching. I'll have to ask her again, but I just got those 4 things. But I thought that was really cool.
Beautiful.
That, we're meant to experience everything that we've experienced, and it's created us who we are. And so, yeah. What else?
Yeah.
Post-its. Oh God. Okay. So I've only got 3. And let's take our power back.
Yes.
Yeah. I love the pause and listen. Yes. And then we're just getting right with love, right? All we're doing is getting right with love. Yeah. That's what I have for you all. So yeah, Mary Magdalene really reminds us that we're not what they call, or she's not what they called her. We're not what people calls us. I did not sleep with Armand. And yeah, it's just, we're all sacred beings, really. And so as we celebrate Mother's Day, may you remember that you're worth it. You're worthy. You're enough. You don't have to do anything to prove yourself. And always honor that inner Magdalene that lives inside of you. Just know that we're all rising together. We're taking back our power, and we are every day we're stepping one step closer to the truth of who we are. And so what's next? Next week, we'll be talking about spiritual bypassing. It can be sneaky, and it wears many masks. And so we're going to uncover some of those, what's hiding deep beneath all those masks, those facades that we put up. And then if you're looking for other ways to deepen your work, you can go to our 5lemonslaughing.com website, 5 spelled out. And we just put up today a new moon meditation ceremony. And there's some journaling exercises that go with that. So go check it out. It was really fun to do. Drusilla Morgan and I did the meditation ceremony. And of course, if this episode spoke to you, the best way to support us is to like it, share it, subscribe to it. It just helps us reach more people that are just amazing, just like you. And so with that, we just appreciate you. We're grateful and thankful for you. And as always, keep coming back. We love you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.